Howdy, folks, and welcome to another great adventure tonight as we get back onto the book we have been reading, and I hope you're all enjoying this adventure. I really want to put this out, and we're really going through the book here. This is from the Star Library. It's an old book from the 1800s. Makes it a little hard to read sometimes because the printing is kind of faded. We're going to not diddly daddle around, but I want to thank you all for coming and enjoying this book with me. I figured if I'm going to read it, I might as well read it out loud and let all of you enjoy it too, because it is a very old book and I don't think there's many copies out there of this. And if they are, they're hard to find. It's kind of a one of a kind in this day and age. So anyway, with that said, we're going to pick right back up where we left off. And these guys were out there. We were having Jim. He was having his troubles with the Indians and the buffalo, and he couldn't get his shots. And he was having quite a time. Now, remember, these guys are on the prairie. The guy that's writing the book is taking an adventure with a trading company and their crew. And as he goes, he is helping out and joining along and writing down the story for all of us to enjoy. So this is his adventure. We're living through his description and through his eyes. So join with me and let's go back into yesteryear, I should say. And we'll get right on this. We'll present you with some good pictures, stuff to look at, because that's what it's all about. Let's do it like that. There you go. You don't need to look at my ugly mug. Anyway, last we left off on October 13th. Now remember, I'm not a professional reader, writer, or scripter. I am just a good question asker. Anyway, this is just for entertainment, and I hope you all enjoy this book and this guy and his adventure. Starting at early day, we traveled. This is October 13th. They do put this by like days that he's out there. We did begin way back when, he was with the Shawnee. Let's see, they started out in September, I think it was. So we're up to October 13th. Starting in early day, we traveled till about 11 o'clock a.m. and halted for breakfast. The team were scarcely turned to graze when a dense band of buffalo cows made their appearance. Oh, you gotta love the appearance of the buffalo cows. And we'll get you some pictures of a buffalo. Yes. There, how about that? That's a more appropriate picture. Okay. Turn to graze when the dense band of buffalo cows made their appearance from the back prairie, winding their way towards the river. Expectation was on tippy-toe, and all appetites doubly sharpened for an anticipated feast, as our hunter and his assistant started to intercept the witless animals at the riverbank. The two placed themselves in a chosen position and awaited the heavily moving throng, which soon advanced to within shooting distance. The sharp crack of a rifle now stopped their headway and caused them to recoil a few paces, leaving one of their number struggling in death. Another discharge followed, and the firmed herd were seen flying from their concealed enemy with all the energy that initiates dread of danger and death lent to their ready feet. But not until another victim had danked the sod with the unsalted liberation of its heart's blood. Ooh, a buffalo stampede. Okay. It pained me as I came up to witness the noble beast as they lay extended upon the gore-dyed ground. The present was no time for regret. We were to feed upon their carcasses. The process of butchering was a new development of the most useful science. The carcass was first turned upon the belly and braced to a position by its distended legs. The operator then commenced his labors by gathering the long hair of the boss and severing a piece obliquely at the junction of the neck and the shoulders. Then, parting the hide from the neck to the rump, a few passes of his ready knife lay bare the sides. Next, paring away the loose skin and prepping a hold with one hand, he pulled the shoulder towards him and with the other severed it from the body, cutting the the uprights of the spinal dorsa and the hump ribs along the lateral to the curve and parting the fleece. From the tough flesh at that point, he deposited it upon a clean grass spot. The same process being described upon the opposite side, the carcass was then slightly inclined, and by the aid of a leg bone bisected at the knee joint and the hump ribs, we parted from the vertebrae, after which, passing his knife aside the ninth rib and around the ends of the midriff, he lay hold of the deserved side, and with 2 or 3 well-directed jerks, removed it to be laid upon his choicely assorted pile. A few other brief minutes then completed the task. Meanwhile, drivers of the company had joined the butcher, and while some were greedily feeding upon the liver and the gall, others helped themselves to marrow, bones, intestines, and so forth. Choice sections with the mountaineers. And others, laden with rich spoils, hastened their return to commence with the more agreeable task of cooking and eating. The remaining animal was butchered in thrice. A section, portions of each were then placed upon a pack horse and conveyed to the wagons. The assorted was, indeed, a splendid one. The pulley, the fleece, the fat, was full 2 inches thick upon the animal's back, and the other dainties were enough to charm the eyes and excite the voracity of an epicure. The campfires soon presented a busy, amusing spectacle. Each one was ornamented with delicious roasts on sticks, planted a slope around it attentively, watched by a long voyagers who awaited the slow process of cooking. Some were seen with thin slices from the bladder, barely heated, though it was by the agency of a few coals, retreating from the admiring throng to enjoy solo their half-cooked morsels. Others paring off a bit from the fresh-turned roast, while their opposites received the finishing operation of the fire, and others tossing their averted bowlines into the flames, and in a few seconds withdrawing for the repast, each seizing his ample share, bemouthed the end of a quick succession to serve the chosen elucient, which, while yielding to the eager teeth, coursed miniature rivulets of oily exuberant from the extremities of the active orifice, barbarding both face and chin, and leaving a delightful eater in all the glories and grease. Every man now had become his own cook, and not to be backward, I closed in with the overture. Seizing a frying pan, replete with tempting levels from the fleece, I twice subjected to the duty, as often its delicious contents found ample storage house, and even yet my long appetite seemed loath to cry hold enough. I don't know why I lost my screen, people. There we go. Sometimes that happens. I guess it's just a thing. Big, majestic animals they are. That's for sure. The agreeable odor exhaled from the drippings of the frying flesh, contained in the pan, invited the taste, a temptation claiming me for its subject. Catching up the vessel, a testing sip made way for the whole of its contents, as a single draught, full 6 gillets. Strange as it may seem, I did not experience the least unpleasant feeling as a result of my extraordinary proportion. The stomach never rebels against buffalo fat. Persons subsisting entirely upon the flesh of these animals prefer an assortment of at least 1/3 solid de poulet, whatever that is. Must be meat. The voyeur is never more satisfied than when he has a good supply of buffalo beef at his command. It is then his greasy viscelids of bespeaks content and his jocund voice and merry laugh evidence the deep felt pleasures and gratification of that reign within. Talk not to him of his delicious delights of civilized life, or pies and puddings, soups and fantasies, roast beef, pound cake, and dessert. He cares for none of these things and will laugh at you at every fancy. He knows his own preference and will tell you boasted exhilarants are not to be compared with it. If you object to the sameness of his sin, or sample fare, he will recount the several varieties of its parts and dissecant upon each of the particular merits. He will illustrate the numerous and dissimilar models of so preparing them, and then they cannot fail to excite by their presence and appease by the taste of the appetite of the most fantastical, and then in point of health, there is nothing equal to buffalo meat. It alone will cure dipsy, prevent consumption, amend a broken concentration, put flesh on the bones of a skeleton, and restore a dead man again to life. If you will give a credence to that, to one half of the manifold virtues he carefully names in your hearing. Well, it sounds like a buffalo will do tons of stuff, so eat more buffalo. On October 14th, we were early en route and made some 20 miles. Our hunter during the day rejoined the caravan laden with the best portions of 3 other fat cows to add to the fun of life and good humor enjoyed by each. Late in the afternoon, we made camp opposite a heavy wooded island called Brady's Island, in memory of a man so named, who was murdered upon it by his companion some 8 years ago. The two were connected with a boat laden with furs on its passage to the States. They had frequently quarreled and were generally upon otherwise bad terms. On the day of the fatal occurrence, they were left alone in the camp by the rest of the boat's crew, who went to quest upon buffalo. At their return, Brady was found lying in his own blood, killed at his companions, affirmed by the accidental discharge of his own rifle. The tale was received quite doubtingly, and his listeners were only deterred from the execution of summary vengeance upon the murder by thought of bare possibility of its truth. The body of the unfortunate man was buried near the spot, but being subsequently disinterred by the wolves, his bones were left to bleach and molder in the sun and the rains in the heavens. Some of them were lying scattered near by upon our arrival, which were collected by the sympathizing voyagers who bestowed upon them those rights and sepulchres they had been so long and cruelly denied. The reader will naturally inquire what became of the supposed murderer. His was a fearful retribution, a mournful tale of suffering worse than death, till death itself in pity came to his relief. Soon after the melancholy incident previously related, the shallowness of the Platte River compelling the company to abandon their boat and make the best of their way to the States on foot, a distance of 250 miles, to the nearest inhabitants, either Indian or white. Their provisions running short and no game at hand, a separation was at about midway of their journey, and each one hurried to its termination as rapidly as possible. The murderer, being but an indifferent walker, was soon left far in the rear. His comrades, on their arrival at the Pawnee village, sent 2 Indians to bring him in, and continued their course to the Council Bluffs. Nothing further was known of the subject of our sketch till some 8 or 9 days subsequent, when a small party of engages in the employ of the American Fur Company, on passing the Pawnee village, were met by a head chief who requested them to visit a white man lying sick at his lodge. They went. He was the murderer, at the point of death. His story was briefly told. The knight succeeded in the departure of his companions in an attempt to light a fire with his pistol, to disperse by the smoke the myriads of mosquitoes that swarmed around and nearly devoured him. An unknown charge it contained was lodged in his thigh bone, serving it into 1,000 pieces. In his condition, he lay helpless. To walk was impossible. He could scarcely move, far less dress his wounds in a proper manner. He managed, however, to affix a piece of red flannel to an upright stick to tell the transient traveler the site of his supposed last resting place. Then, crawling with difficulty to the riverside, he remained 6 days and nights, tormented by mosquitoes, reduced by pain, and wasted by continued hunger, till scarcely the wreck of manhood was left him. It was then he longed for death and terminated his agony. Still, he could not endure the thoughts of dying. Early in the morning of the 7th day, his ear caught in the indistant murmur of sounds. They were human voices. No, he must be dreaming. He hears them again. It's no dream. They are human voices. They approach. It is his to his assist. Overjoyed, he beholds 2 Pawnees bending over him with compassion, pictured expressively upon their countenance. They gave him meat. They dressed his wounds and did everything in their power to alleviate his misery. Oh, say not there is no pity in the bosom of the red man. Having constructed a rude little litter of poles and using their own robes for his bed, they carefully conveyed him upon their shoulders to a place he yet occupied. But the care and sympathy of his attendants failed to atone for the previous neglect. Mortification had already taken place, and the death claimed him for a victim. He expired in the presence of those whom the good chief had called to his bedside, but before his tongue refused to speak, he contested the murder of the Brady and owned the just of his punishment in all the untold miseries he had compelled to endure. Vengeance is mine, and I will repay it, said the Lord. Oh, yeah, so he was the murderer. On resuming our journey, the road gradually bore towards the hills upon the left, which presented an off-line of continental immensities rising as the traveler advances to the elevation of 400 or 500 feet, and finally cross them at a point of an angle formed near the confluent of the two great forks of the Platte, upon the east side, from hence descending to the opposite bottom. We reached a timberless spring and made camp soon after nightfall. The lack of wood at this place was readily met by great abundance of buffalo chips, the common substitute of the prairies. And at a brief interval, the campfires were merrily blazing with all the appliances of cookery about them. Early the next morning, our hunter rejoined the caravan, bringing with him the spoils of 2 more cows. He had passed the night upon the prairie alone, with coat or blanket or anything to screen him from the bleak autumn winds that swept over the naked plains, dancing their dirge to the dying year. The sky gave evidence of an approaching storm, and we hastily started to quest of some more sheltered spot in which to weather it. A few miles brought us to a river, and availing ourselves of small supply of driftwood, we made halt. The combustibles the vicinity afforded were soon collected, and the campfires impaired with their generous warmth despite the falling rain, nor were they permitted to remain long embellished by the numerous kettles, frying pans, and roasting sticks at command. I here enjoyed full test of some of the main varieties of mountain fare. Here, too, I freely enlarged upon our voyeurs, which, as they now asserted, would make a man shed rain like an otter and stand cold like a polar bear, quaintly adding, if he could always live upon each of dins, he would never die. I must in justice confess that the real merits of our present bill of fare, by far exceeding my previous expectations. The rain continued till near night, but little did we care. The choicest though the prairie afforded was now before us, and rain or shine, we were content. Sound in health and buoyant in spirits, we fully enjoyed ourselves, despite the frowning elements. A little before sundown, the rain subsided into a thick fog, and an old bull of consequent obscurity straggled close upon the camp. And see what we got. The abrupt passage of a rifle ball through his lights was his first sense of presence of danger. The fringed customer then retreated a few steps, and falling, surrendered himself to the restless power of the cold lead. A large band of cows also made their appearance in the same manner, and our hunter struck out to waylay them. Permitting the unwitting animals to advance with good shooting distance, a discharge from the rifle brought down one of their number. The band then recoiled slightly by snuffing the odor of blood, they returned immediately to their prosperous companion. This was enough. A charm now riveted them to the spot. A strange infusion had seized upon them. They began to spurring the ground with their feet, and then bellowing, goring the falling beast, as if forcing her to rise, then rolling upon the grass in demonstrative sympathy. And now that she had ceased to struggle and lay yet quivering in death, they licked her bleeding wounds and seemed to exercise a kind of mournful rivalry in the bestowment of their testimonials of affection. She is encircled by her companions. An effort to approach from without, it resisted by those within. A fight ensues, and all becomes confusion. Each turns against her neighbor and continues the strife till the space around the carcass is again vacated, whereupon a general rush once more centers to the spot, and all unite to react the former scene. In this manner, they persisted in their frenzied devotion to the fallen one, as if determined to restore her life and action or perish by her side. Meanwhile, the hunter's rifle had been busy employed, but they heeded it not. 4 more of their number lay gasping in death upon the extinguished ground, and they still seemed no more disposed to leave the scene of slaughter than the first. 16 successive shots were fired, each bearing blood, wounds, and death, and yet the spell was no near broken. It was a spectacle vested in melancholy animation. The pawing, goring, bellowing, licking of wounds, and struggles of rival affections remained the same, with no visible abatement of their ferocity. The sun had set, and the sable hue of twilight impalled the blood-dank, slaughtered ground. The death-dealing rifle had ceased its sharp crack, and the gore-scenting wolves, have half-starved and eager for their purpose, prey came flocking upon every side, mingling their woebegone howlings with the piteous moans of spellbound herd and the loud whistlings of the prairie winds, and yet they lingered. At last, the impatient hunter advanced. More affrighted at his presence of the man than the companionship of death, they now gave way and reluctantly left the field to him, who had no unfeeling occasion their burden of mourning and woe, still ever stopping to graze, as if longing to return and die with those they loved. At hands now summoned to aid at the work of butchery. But the fast enshrouding darkness soon drove us back to camp, leaving the task not half completed. Our withdrawal from the premise was the signal for possession by the eager wolves, and whose ceasing yelps and livelong night made the gloomy interval doubtlessly dismal. By morning, nothing but bones and thick pieces of skin marked the scene of their recent revelings. And oh, come on, I got more than this. There we go. Thus early I'd learned that approach of buffalo with success, the hunter should carefully maintain the leeward, such as a remarkable sensitiveness. They will sooner flee from the smell than the sight of a man. Their sense of smell with the wind and far exceeds their scope of vision. It is extremely acute that they even the fresh footsteps of a man crossing their path are to them a sure cause of alarm and fight. Of all the derivatives of game indigenous to the mountains and the prairies of the Great West, and the exemption perhaps of the grizzly bear, no animal is more tedious of life than the buffalo. To shoot it in the head is an initiate effort. No rifle can protect a ball with or project a ball with sufficient force to penetrate to perforate the thick hair and hide to its brain, though the double skull bone that protects it. A paunch shot is equally vain. The only sure points for the marksman are the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, or vertebrae, and even then, the unyielding victim is not unfrequently escapes. Buffalo wounded in the skirts of the lights have been known to live for several days afterwards. I have witnessed their escape even after the reception of 15 bullet wounds, and most of them at such points as would have proved fatal to almost any other animal. In the summer of 43, I myself killed one of them that had been shot through the surface at the bull heart apparently 4 or 5 days previous, which doubtless would have recovered had it remained unmolested. A gun suitable for killing this kind of game should never carry to exceed 40 balls to the pound. A lesser bore would almost be entirely useless. The distance generally required for shot, the smallness of the ball, is liability of variation from the wind, and its failure to hold up and retain its force contribute to render the use of such a piece little else than an idle waste of ammunition. Okay, how are we doing here for time? Oh, well, we hit a half hour. We're going to be on October 17th. Well, is next. Well, I hope you enjoyed the buffalo hunt. All in all, buffalo hunting, yep, must have been a thing. I tell you what, being back in the day, seeing hundreds of buffalo, I think the pioneers were a little wasteful. Yeah, I do. No disrespect, but I think they were a little wasteful. We just kept shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting, and we got a whole bunch. We went down there, picked one or two, and then we left all the rest. And then the wolves got to eat. But then they created a wolf problem, and they had to go out and shoot the wolves. You see what I mean? Yeah. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. Well, anyway, thank you all for joining me, and I hope you can come back again to find out what happens on October 17th as we continue our adventures through the Rocky Mountains. Thank you all for being here. Remember, go out and have a great day and be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. Peace, everybody.